about anything and everything, but I didn't know who would show up today and what you guys want to talk about. So I'm happy just to like chat or just test out my little PowerPoint and test out if I know how to screen share. Like I can do breastfeeding consults, but like this whole IT world is so, I'm a dinosaur it seems. It's like fresh for me. So shall I just try?
Did she freeze for everyone else too? For me.
No, I don't. This top. Here we go. Do you guys see anything of mine? Not yet. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Awesome. You can see this picture of me and Delilah?
Yes.
Oh, I know what I'm doing. So, yeah, I just wanted to try and keep myself on track. So these little pictures for me more than anything. But yeah, I guess I'd start off introducing myself. And yeah, I'm Bekki, and I am a private practice midwife and IBCLC, so International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. I've been a private care team model, and yeah, I've had my own sort of challenges of breastfeeding with my two beautiful children. I have Sebastian, my 4.5-year-old, and my nearly 1-year-old Delilah, and I guess and I also have an angel baby, my firstborn Gabriel, who's not alive but part of our beautiful family. But yeah, breastfeeding Sebastian and Delilah gave me some really tough insights to the realities of breastfeeding beyond what I knew as a midwife. So it really, Sebastian's journey really sort of triggered the journey down lactation consultancy, and Delilah just brought it home for me, because despite being a midwife for a long time and also a lactation consultant, I had intense breastfeeding challenges with Delilah, and actually sought support from a lactation consultant myself within the last 12 months. So I guess the reason I want to share that is it isn't a lack of knowledge that sometimes can be why we need some support. Sometimes it can be almost the very thing when you overthink this stuff. But you know, we all need support, and we all yeah, can sort of find ourselves in tricky situations when we're learning such an epic new skill such as breastfeeding, and every baby and every journey is different. So anyway, I chose to do Full Circle. It's my home business, and I do home visits and have a home consult practice downstairs, and it just allows me to be close to Delilah, because I'm still on my own breastfeeding journey, and I love what I do and I love supporting women, but I guess it's important for me to recognize, for the sake of the women I support, that it's really hard to juggle anything other than the full-time job of being a mum and breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is truly this, like, you know, on demand, all-encompassing journey, and I guess there's the undertone of that in Full Circle. So I hope that makes sense with what I'm trying to say, but yeah, that's me. So going on to, like, I guess why, like, giving you guys just a little bit of insight to, I guess I was going to just talk about the basics of breastfeeding, and I think everybody here is already with babies, yeah, postnatal. Yeah. So I guess I wanted to highlight that for some women, just in case there was anyone here who's still pregnant, you know, we all have different equipment. So we come into our breastfeeding journey with different nipples and different breast shapes, and we've all hit puberty different. Our breasts change differently in pregnancy. So all of those things influence our breastfeeding journey. And that's not even taking into consideration our baby and the individuality of our baby. So for some women, it's really necessary and really appropriate to be encouraged to have some support and a bespoke sort of breastfeeding plan antenatally. But since you're all postnatal, let's just move on. So just in, you know, you guys have all sort of been there, done that in terms of having your babies and having that first sort of breastfeed and the sort of golden hour, 3 hours after baby's born. And I guess, you know, a lot of people, just like a birth plan, can go into birth wanting something, and crossroads come along and things influence the outcome of birth. And it's very much a ripple effect with breastfeeding. So I guess it's something I want to highlight, that the birth in itself influences your breastfeeding journey in the beginning. So, you know, if there was antenatal, like women still pregnant here, it would be worth really highlighting this for them in terms of like the choices they make in pregnancy that influence their birth can influence breastfeeding. But certainly, irrespective of your birth, how your baby responds to the outside world has an impact on breastfeeding, because we know babies, you know, when we can have that skin to skin first breastfeed in that first hour, we're really laying down the sort of foundation for a positive breastfeeding experience. When we can work with baby's natural instincts. So, you know, babies coming out a little bit more sleepy or a little bit tender if they've had sort of any instrumental births, or say they've had a slower start to life, that all has a ripple effect to some degree on the breastfeeding journey. So some women end up with more challenges purely when we sort of look back on the beginning, those things playing a part. And it doesn't mean that they're not able to breastfeed, it's just, you know, highlighting the need for that bespoke support, I guess. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So yeah, these pictures probably don't make sense. I have got no script here. I'm just freestyling. So the reason I've got these pictures here is obviously we want that first picture of that beautiful skin to skin and that first breastfeed in that first hour. And, you know, the babies that need some respiratory support, you know, that is a priority that we can't avoid and we have to respect. And that changes what we're doing in that first hour for good reason. No baby's going to breastfeed well when they can't breathe well. So just like in birth, we have to adjust our priorities as they come along, as we hit those crossroads. But certainly, hopefully you guys were well informed and had great support in your births, that, you know, unnecessary interventions like interrupting baby for checks and weights and all that sort of stuff and delaying that first breastfeed or that skin to skin in the first hour of life, they're unnecessary interventions. Anyway, lots of magic happens in the beginning, and you've all been there and done that. So hopefully you have experienced some good positive breastfeeding in that initial stage. Move on, Bekki. So, you know, just to keep it really simple today, I could go on and on about the hormones behind breastfeeding, but just to sort of align it back to birth in a way, because there's so many beautiful parallels. It really is just one big love story. So the hormones behind birth, you know, a huge variety, but really oxytocin is our love-making hormone. It's the hormone we're releasing when we're laughing and we're making love, and it's the same hormone we're releasing when we're letting down. So whilst we need the prolactin to actually create the milk, we need oxytocin, our love-making hormone, to release the milk. So feeling good and soaking your baby up and being in love with your baby literally helps you release milk to your baby. So, you know, so much of the consults that I do comes back to checking in with a mum and helping her recognize how she's feeling before she breastfeeds her baby, because that is really important. You know, it's really important to feel good and comfortable before you even start your feed as much as you can, because that's going to play a part in how much milk your baby's getting, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, we want to feel good, we want to be comfortable, and we want to work with both mum and baby's natural instincts. And babies are born with this biological desire and need to breastfeed, and so are mums. We are hormonally driven to breastfeed, and we, you know, that's why you hear things differently to other people. When you hear your baby crying, you think it's, you know, you're apologizing potentially for that and hearing it so loudly, when actually, you know, no one's hearing it in the same way as that primal mum. And that's really normal, because we're just primal animals doing what we're meant to do. So in terms of working with our natural instincts with breastfeeding, I very much teach and recommend what we sort of call biological nursing. Has anyone heard of that before? And so essentially, yeah, biological nursing is just really relaxed, sort of laid back way of breastfeeding that sort of triggers babies' natural instincts. So when we think kind of that breast crawl, so babies that are born that with all their instincts primed, they aren't sort of dozy from potential interventions in labour, and they're able to do a sort of like instinctual breastfeed at birth, they can literally crawl to the breast when they're put skin to skin, chest to chest when a baby's born. So sometimes when women haven't had the opportunity to do that with their baby, and for whatever reason there hasn't been much sort of biological nursing or instinctual sort of triggering breastfeeds, we go back to basics and we think of it like a reset and start again. And so get mum in sort of that 45-degree angle position, take the top off, no sort of bra and tops in the way, mum's really comfortable, and skin to skin with Bubby. Put Bubby in the center of the chest. Can you guys see me while you're seeing the screen? Okay, I wasn't sure, sorry. I'll sit back then. Put Bubby in the chest and let Bub find its way and firing those instincts. So, you know, some women feed their babies with them in those love to dream swaddles and that sort of thing. And certainly if Bubby is enjoying that, that can be a sign that baby really needs the security around it to have a good feed. Some babies want that sort of feedback, but giving baby orientation to your chest and your breast by having skin to skin, hands free, and really letting Bubby find its way and then guiding it on can really press, it's like a reset, a reboot for baby having a deeper, wider latch, which with a deeper, wider latch, Bubby's going to be able to get that milk better, which in turn creates more milk, which I'll talk about in a sec. But yeah, I've got a 1-minute little video of a baby having its first breastfeed that I just grabbed off the internet. It's nothing great. I'm not sure if this will work, but I'll just try, yeah? Just to show you, highlight that biological nursing. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I'm a genius. So let's see.
As many babies do, Cameron has had a short rest after his birth. But the skin-to-skin contact with Angela has triggered his instinct to feed. He's beginning to start moving himself. On a wee crawl. Yeah, he's beginning to waken up. There's a textbook for feeding as well. Yeah. He sniffs and licks Angela's breast, and it's not long before he's happily attached and feeding away.
That's fantastic. See the nice big deep sucks he's having now. You can see him using his jaw and his tongue. And his cheeks get nice and fat when he sucks. So he pauses and then away he goes again. Can you see how he's nice and turned in towards you? He's in nice and close. And really, to get them to attach well, the trick is just put them in the right position. You put the baby in the right position, he'll attach perfectly. Absolutely great.
So, I don't know what I'm doing now. Hang on. Oh, God. You see my messy desktop? Yeah. So, you know, that's a sort of biological positioning, really just firing off baby's instincts and giving baby that sort of respect that they want to explore, and they're their own little person right from the beginning. So, you know, us mums, we mean so well when we're just like, come on, you're hungry, I'm going to just put you on, and we put our hands on the back of their head, and they've literally got a reflex there that pushes back, so they're fighting with us saying, I'm a big boy or I'm a big girl, and I know what I'm doing. So we really need to just sit back and listen and watch and let that baby's instincts do its thing and help guide it. And once we've sort of got a feel for that, and the baby's got a feel for that, slowly but surely we walk in the right direction of just having a breastfeed journey that you don't even need to look, they just put themselves on, and it's as simple as that. So I know it's not as simple as that for so many women, but starting off with the instincts and the basics can be hugely beneficial. So I hope that makes sense. So a lot of women, you know, you can do all these things, but you kind of just often sitting there wondering what's normal anyway. So how do I know when my baby's had enough milk? So, you know, going back to the very beginning, I'm not sure how old all your babies are, but for a fresh baby, a bubby would feed every hour, sometimes every hour to 3 hours, but at least 8 times in a 24-hour period. So that's, you know, if we were clockwork every 3 hours, but no one's clockwork, no adults clockwork, no babies clockwork. They're not robots. You know, sometimes they just take one side, sometimes they take both sides. I've just done a consult with a woman and the baby took 5 goes. And that was fine because we're boosting breast milk. There's no normal. It's about the baby getting on, latching well, and having those signs that tell us it's getting enough milk, which is it gets on, it swallows. So you're hearing those nice noises as it throws that milk back and swallows. It's having heavy wet nappies, so at least sort of 5 nappies or more a day with sort of colourless or odourless urine. At least 2 more poos that are sort of mustard colour, but that changes from the beginning, 20-cent piece or more. Babies are typically back to their birth weight within at least 2 weeks. And when baby latches, it feeds well, it feeds vigorously, comes off, and ideally is milk drunk and satisfied. But obviously that doesn't happen every time. But a baby that's content between feeds, that's got good output, that wakes and feeds well, is hunky-dory. Things are looking good, you know. And obviously it's not just the baby that tells the story, it's the mum and her breast. So if the breast is essentially the nipple's just elongated, your breast feels full before baby gets on, softer afterwards, then we know we've had good milk transfer. So all these puzzle pieces put together tell us a really positive story. And when one piece isn't quite right, then we look at the whole picture to sort of see, you know, are we going down the path of baby not quite getting enough milk, or, you know, what's going on here? And it's a really good trigger to seek support. So as your milk changes, so I was kind of writing this assuming there'd be women who hadn't had babies before, but I dare say you guys are past this point. But, you know, when baby's first born, we've got just the colostrum in our milk. So that what I sort of align to sort of rich chocolate cake in terms of you don't need much, but it's the really, really, really good stuff. And we just sort of the principal baseline of breastfeeding is the more you empty, the more they fill in terms of your breasts. So as your baby gets on and feeds, your milk is changing, and it's getting to that sort of larger volume, which changes in its consistency. And that in turn changes the colour of your baby's poo. So I'm sure you guys have all had this experience by the age of your babies, but when baby was first born, it passed meconium, right? In the first few days, that thick tar, really hard to get off poo. And as baby breastfed or fed, that changed in colour. It went sort of to green and not as thick. And then it's more mustard. As baby gets older, sort of 5-7 days along, and that's another puzzle piece in terms of as baby's feeding, the more you empty, the more they fill. It's changing that milk. Your milk comes in, and the baby's poo changes too as the milk's changing. So this picture is just a picture of like what could be titled fore milk and hind milk, but we don't get too caught up in that sort of thing. We know babies just get on and get what they need. And yeah, but as baby gets on and has a really good feed and really sort of feeds on what some women would describe as what feels like an empty breast, there's no such thing with a good latch as an empty breast. It's literally baby just getting that sort of protein-rich, heavy hind milk, which helps baby sleep, really important, and is the baby's also really clever and putting that order in for a couple of days' time to make more milk. So we sort of put the order in, baby at the breast, empty the breast, 48 hours later-ish, there's more milk. So yeah, does that make sense? What I'm saying? A little bit all over the place. Any questions? Yeah. So there's so many reasons why breastfeeding your baby is amazing, and I won't, harp on about it. I'm so happy to if you want me to, but there's just nothing more bespoke, nothing more sort of just made perfectly for your baby. It's free. You guys know all of that, and it's got so many wonderful things, not just for baby but for mum. But just to highlight how amazing it is in this current pandemic time, there's literally research going on in New York that an immunologist is researching mothers breastfeeding and looking for antibodies in the breast milk that could be protective for babies for COVID-19 and potentially even something that's protective for adults. So we have this incredible magical mechanism in breast milk where when we put a baby to the breast, our baby to our breast, the saliva in baby's mouth is somehow red at our breast, and we can tell if your baby is fighting any pathogens, and it sends a message to our body that creates antigens that we then feed back to the baby in our breast milk. Like, it's ridiculous. So there is so much research out there that tells us how wonderful breast milk is for our babies, and it isn't something that women need to put as extra pressure on themselves. It just doesn't make breastfeeding any easier. We know it's nature's way. We know it's the best thing for baby. It just means that it is absolutely okay to seek support to get through something so important. So I just wanted to highlight there's lots of different breastfeeding positions. This picture slide is in no way exhaustive. Like, babies do all sorts of things once they get the hang of it. And really the only words I'd want to highlight on this is experiment. So for every mum, it's bespoke baby and your own equipment, and the only way to really figure out what really, really works for you is to try. So on days that you're kind of tired and you just don't have the energy to experiment, you do what works. On the days that you're feeling adventurous, try something else. And that's slowly but surely how you get your sort of your full array of confidence in terms of breastfeeding and trying different things and slowly sort of broadening you know what I'm trying to say. You know, broadening your experiences with breastfeeding. Say it's, you know, trying that same position out, or in a different chair, or, you know, while you're having something to eat. So slowly but surely you get there, but certainly you do what works to establish breastfeeding. So yeah, there's lots of different things you can do there, and I just see someone's chatting with me. Yes, some try to feed in a carrier, absolutely, Caitlin, and that's definitely something that can, you know, there's lots of sort of things you can do depending on how you're going with the, you know, journey, for whatever reason, how tired you are and how confident you are breastfeeding. Certainly I find for the women I see, when they're really trying to establish breastfeeding and we've, say, got low milk supply, sideline feed, that lying down position, is a game changer, because it means baby can be on, off, and we've got these marathon cluster feed sessions going on, but mum can get some rest. And I would put a pillow between her legs in that picture, but whatever. But yeah, as you get confident and your baby gets bigger and you feel really good about the latch and you're not going to get damaged, say feeding on the go in a carrier, you can eventually do that while you hang the washing, potentially, depending on, you know, how breastfeeding is going for you. So yeah, it's pretty remarkable what you can do breastfeeding when your baby is just sort of doing its own thing. So lots of different positions to experiment with, and let's just see if I can move on. And so yeah, I just wanted to highlight the fact that, you know, I'm sure you guys are in the trenches and experiencing this, but breastfeeding is epic in terms of the changes it has to your relationship with your partner. And yeah, we know through research that you're 10 times more likely to be successful breastfeeding when you've got a partner who understands the benefits of breastfeeding. So it's not too much to expect your partner to sort of also be involved and informed in terms of the benefits of breastfeeding the baby, and so many partners are and want to be. But yeah, it's also I guess something that comes up a lot in terms of my midwifery and lactation consultant practice, with beautiful dads wanting to help and wanting to be involved in the feeding of their baby. And whilst that's amazing, sometimes the most beneficial thing for the breastfeeding journey for both the baby and the mum is for dad to nourish the mum and to look after mum while mum establishes breastfeeding and nourishes the baby, particularly for the first 6 weeks. So yeah, does anyone have any thoughts or anything you want to say about that, or any questions? It's always totally different for everybody. No, anyway, there's just so many beautiful dads that want to help by, say, helping mum sleep by giving a bottle, and whilst every family is different and everyone can choose what works best for them, we know that a baby is molding its mouth to that, you know, individual breast as it breastfeeds. And I kind of use the analogy of, if you think of the baby's jaw as the clay, and the cheeks and the muscles of the cheeks as the molder, in time, as baby uses those cheeks and muscles at the breast, you're molding that baby's whole face and oral cavity perfectly for that breast, which is what it's biologically meant to do. There's nothing wrong with doing what you've got to do with bottles and dummies. I'm not saying that at all, but in terms of establishing that perfect mold, if we can avoid giving the bottles or giving the dummies, we are setting Bub up for its, you know, most sort of, what's the word, just the easiest path forward for breastfeeding. So finding ways around partners supporting mum is sometimes just a really important discussion about mums honouring themselves for the important work that they're doing breastfeeding, and being really comfortable to say, I would really like for you to nourish me rather than the baby. And I would really like for you to help me get Bubby in a sideline position so I can rest rather than giving baby a bottle so I can go sleep, because you are what we call a dyad with your baby, where you're in harmony with each other. So sometimes mums find they actually sleep better when babies are breastfed, and that is a biological norm, just like babies sleep better when they're breastfed. So, you know, there's unfortunately no corners to cut with motherhood. That's why we need our village, and that's why we need that support to let us do the beautiful but grueling work sometimes. So yeah, just wanted to say that. So typical challenges, the picture of me there feeding, and it was not so typical, the challenges I was facing at the time, but never mind. But typical challenges we can expect when we're feeding can be tender nipples, you know, particularly for first-time mums. It's the first time you've ever had a little vacuum at your breast as often as, you know, is normal, you know, every sort of hour to 4 hours, 8 times in a 24-hour period. That takes its toll on your skin. And even with a beautiful latch, it can still create sort of raw tender skin that I kind of sometimes say, this is not the nicest analogy, but it's kind of like your pre-mama nipples are shed like snake skin and you get your tough mama nipples. And we don't want damage so bad that you can't put your baby at your breast, but an element of tenderness is incredibly normal and a part of the journey. Kind of similar to an element of tearing down below in birth is normal and part of the journey for mums. So, and there's a big difference between proper damage and tender nipples. So that comes back to latch. But, you know, baby having those octopus arms and getting distracted by its hand in the beginning, that changes over time. So those octopus arms are annoying but normal in the beginning. So really going back to that biological nursing and putting baby at the chest and guiding it down will help it orientate. Obviously, being tired can be very, very normal for both mum and baby. It's hard work for both of you to breastfeed. That engorgement when your milk comes in the sort of day 3, 48 hours in, day 3 to 4, that's really normal and it recalibrates. So, you know, it's not a sustained thing to have that sort of Pamela Anderson feeling when that initially happens. And yeah, just really typical to have your L plates with breastfeeding. Like, it doesn't matter how many times women have breastfed, every baby's different, just like every birth is different. And yeah, you've got to give yourself that grace to learn a new human breastfeeding. So that first 6 weeks, I say, is a write-off for just being with your L plates. So all very typical. So not so typical things to highlight. And this was the nicest picture I could find, even bottom, with the other pictures I have of severe nipple damage or like abnormal poo. So I thought I'd just do eczema. But yeah, so issue not so typical can be like breast refusal. So some babies have, you know, negative conditioning from having too many people come along and help with breastfeeding and push the baby on. Babies remember these experiences and they start to get stressed sometimes at the breast. So that's not so typical. Severe nipple damage that stops you from being able to put your baby on the breast. Oral nipple thrush, easily fixed, but certainly, you know, something to get some advice and treatment for. Blocked ducts, lumps in your breast, hot, lumpy breasts, and mastitis is, you know, often relates back to a poor latch. So many issues can be resolved with baby having that really good deep latch and really emptying the breast well. So coming back to that biological nursing, coming back to those signs that baby's, you know, not damaging the nipple, swallowing well, calm at the breast, coming off milk drunk is preventative for all that not so typical challenges. You know, persistent low milk supply would tell us potentially that baby hasn't emptied the breast well, so it hasn't filled well, and that often goes hand in hand with a baby gaining weight as well as we would expect. Does all of that make sense? Too much? So what? So yeah, there's just so much. It's just like birth, where birth, it's like, honestly, babies come in and get out the same way. How is this in any way in need of any kind of learning? You just do it. And it's different for every woman, every single birth, every time. There is nuances and an individuality, and it comes back to every little bit that's in that bespoke sort of person's scenario changes things. So it's exactly the same in breastfeeding. Every little bit makes it individual, and that has a different influence at different times as we go along. So it really helps having someone who knows you, who knows your story, who knows, to have continuity in the postnatal period is just as important to have continuity antenatally. And I've talked a lot about kind of seeking help as you need, but I guess I want to highlight the point that you are the expert in your baby. No one will know your baby like you, and there is no gospel according to one, even for a lactation consultant. When you're seeking support in breastfeeding, you're still the person who knows best, just like in a birth, you know best. So I hope saying that reminds you to, and I'm sure you guys are doing this anyway, but to read your baby, not the book. So many women will ask questions, and it's normal, and I've done it myself, but like, how much sleep should my baby have? Or when should my baby be feeding? Or lots of questions like that, because there are sleep schedules out there and there are feed schedules out there. And if we broke down what a baby would have in terms of by bottle, there would be a feeding quota out there. But when it comes to breastfeeding, like birth, we've got this massive layer of trust involved, informed trust. So trust that comes with you understanding, your baby's getting on, draining, sucks and swallows, comes off milk junk, wheeze and poos. The boobs work, the baby's getting what it needs. So sometimes we just can't overthink this. So reading your baby, not the books, helps you become the expert in your baby, and helps your intuition guide you. And I certainly find for myself and for my ladies, but really I'm speaking more as a mum saying this, anytime I lose my way and I'm like, I don't know what to do, like I don't understand this cry, or I don't know what's happening, I just put my baby in that biological position and have a moment, and it's like I'm rebooting my own instincts, and I'm like, okay, I know what to do. Sometimes I need that moment just as much as the baby. So anyway, I thought I'd share that. So now that I've informed you, not that it's pretty quick and I've freestyled, but what I want to say is, like, you just don't overthink it. So you trust your boobs work with all those signs that reassure you baby's getting what it needs. You seek support if you aren't getting those signs, but you don't overthink it. You just go by feel. So if you can put your baby on and it feels comfortable, it feels like your breast is elongating, your baby is comfortably latching, sucking and swallowing, and showing all those signs that it's getting enough milk, enjoy it. Because ideally, it's a beautiful journey and you're releasing more milk by enjoying it. It's not a thinking thing. Just like birth, we don't think our way through birth. So breastfeeding is 100% a marathon, depending on, the lines in the sand for you. But, it is a marathon. And so I definitely say we just chunk it down, just like birth feels like a marathon when you get started, when you don't know how long it's going to go for. So some people, one day at a time works for them. Sometimes it's one feed at a time, so just not looking too far ahead in terms of what your goals are. It's just, in the context of sometimes having those challenging days, I like to tell my couples, can you do the next breastfeed? Right? Just think, can the next time baby wakes up and feeds, do you want to put it to the breast? And then, do that again the next time. Because it can be all too much sometimes at the beginning of the breastfeeding journey to imagine going for as long as you do. And next thing you know it, your baby's however old and you've, been doing it a long time. So yeah, like I said before, you're the expert on the baby, so you trust your gut. If everyone's telling you your baby's latched well and feeding well, but you're hearing your baby telling you that it's hungry, listen to that, and you find someone who will listen to you and get that support. I've never met a mum who doesn't know what is going on. When she's asked gently enough, she knows. But yeah, if you want reassurance that what you think is right as well, that is also a really good reason to seek support, because there is a lot of benefit in getting the confidence that what you already knew is bang on, hunky-dory, tickety-boo as well. So, but trust yourself and know that it's more than just milk that your baby needs. So just having that pause when your baby dials up and maybe gets a little bit stressed, knowing it's not necessarily a hunger thing always. Sometimes it's just that comfort, and dialing your baby down with your sensory input of your cuddles and your love helps then potentially get baby to breastfeed, because we know that babies can't feed well when they're dialed up and distressed. Just like a mum's not going to release milk well when she's dialed up. Does that make sense? And eventually, slowly but surely, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you find what works. Anything goes eventually. This my son feeding, looks like he's feeding on his big toe, anything goes, he's not. That's just a weird position toddlers put themselves in when they're feeding. And yeah, like I said, support's available to you. There's just so much support out there. So you've got Australian Breastfeeding Association, there's lots of child health clinics, and you've got private practice midwives, and you've got other mums. Other mums are a brilliant support for each other. Take Google with a grain of salt, Save Our Sleep, throw it out the window. The Contented Little Baby, throw it out the window. Possum's Clinic is incredible. And yourself. So just trust your gut and go from there. And this is just a picture of the back end of my home, where my home clinic is. So, you could be walking past support and not even know it, but it's everywhere when you sort of reach out. And just to summarize, I guess, in terms of what I offer for the first 6 weeks after in the postnatal period, I, with my private practice midwifery, can offer Medicare rebates for all consults. And I try and keep prices super low so that women feel that they can access that support easily. So I do, this is the inside of my clinic, in clinic or in home or teleconsults in the pandemic time that we're in. But yeah, I could talk forever. So that's all I could whip up in the hour I had last night. So I'm sorry, but that's me. That's what I thought I'd share.
Thanks, Bekki. I wanted to say too, just about the last thing that you just mentioned, is I think so much of it is normalizing what you're experiencing. And you get that through talking with other moms. And I think that's what's really hard in this time, is we are so isolated, and all those mothers groups that you would have sort of normally just be, automatically channeled into, they're not happening. So I know I'm running weeklies mothers groups. Bekki runs mothers groups. So definitely find an online group that you're comfortable with, and that just sharing and asking questions of other mothers is so valuable to help you get your bearings of, what is normal, may be more of a concern. But I think so much of it is just normalizing that, you know, breastfeeding is hard, and there's days that are challenging, there's weeks that are challenging, but just knowing that other people are experiencing that too is really helpful.
100%. And that reminds me to say, you know, like, it is, people sort of often are perplexed by the amount of conflicting advice that they get. And whilst there's too much conflicting advice that goes on, for sure, it's actually really normal that there is conflicting advice, because it just highlights how individual we all are, and that everybody has a different way, everybody finds their way, and there is no right or wrong, so long as you're responding to your baby and recognizing, you know, your baby's needs and your own needs. There's no right or wrong. And yeah, we don't need to take on everything. So when someone tells us something that is really true for them, you sort of let it sit in you and decide if it resonates, and trust your gut. And if it does, it's like, cool, I'll experiment with that. And if it doesn't, it's like, thanks for that, but that's not for me. And that's normal, and that's really well practiced between mums. It's just not as easy to practice between health professionals and mums. So it's really important when you go into seeking support that you remember you're the expert still, even though you're getting support on your baby. No one knows your baby like you. You grew your baby, like nobody knows your baby like you. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Does anyone have specific questions? You can either just pop them up in the chat or just unmute yourself.
How's everyone finding breastfeeding?
I have a question. I had like one boob was like quite red yesterday and the other one wasn't. Is that like a blocked duck thing? It was like this, like.
Did you have any lumps, or was it hot?
It was hot, and it was like sort of, there was a bit of like hardness.
Yeah. So typically before someone develops mastitis, they get blocked ducts. So that's essentially the milk hasn't been effectively removed from the breast for whatever reason. So often that comes back to the latch of the baby. So check to see if you've got any damage on your nipple on that particular side. And be really diligent. Yeah, if you do, be really diligent with, if a baby gets on and it's not a great latch and you're kind of curling your toes through a painful latch, know that bub's not getting good milk and you're getting damage, and it's just not worth it. You detach the latch, you put your finger in, break that latch, and start again. Skin to skin, biological, 45 degrees, start again, really get all those instincts working with you. And then for blocked ducts, because it's not suddenly mastitis, if it's just, you know, red and lumpy, it's about that conservative measures. You've got typically about 48 hours of just getting on top of it before it starts to potentially go down that more sort of sinister mastitis path. And it's just conservative measures of getting the milk out. So uninterrupted access to your breast as often as possible, focusing on that side, but not neglecting the other side. Otherwise, you'll end up hot and lumpy on the other side. Using a warm washer to help vasodilate, so just sort of like helps the milk flow out. I sort of say piano fingers, so we don't want to like press and massage and actually do damage to the cells underneath, but gentle piano fingers, and going back to remembering I've got to relax into this, deep breaths into this, like let that oxytocin flow when baby's actually feeding. But if that doesn't change and it gets more red, hot, painful, you get aches and pains and you develop a fever, then you need to get some support, because that's going down the path of potentially mastitis. That might require some antibiotics.
Okay.
But yeah, uninterrupted access to your breast, good latch, get the milk out.
Yeah.
If you wake up like this, call somebody.
Bekki, I was wondering if you had advice on breast refusal. So my baby, she's 10 weeks old, and it started maybe a week ago, where she'll get on and she'll have, maybe a 5 to 10 minute feed, and then just sort of throw herself back. And sometimes she cries, sometimes she just doesn't want to go back on. Or sometimes, even though that it's been maybe 3 hours or something, she just doesn't want to feed. So she's still got those wet nappies. I'm still getting at least 5 or 6 a day. She
How old did you say she is?
She's 10 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I've got lots of milk. I've had to start pumping just because I was a little bit afraid of the supply being affected by it. So,
And is she looking hungry? Are you putting her to the breast when she's looking hungry, or are you putting her to the breast?
So a bit of both. When the hand goes to her mouth, and when she's making those mouth shapes, or when she's sort of throwing her head to the side, rooting, I'm using those cues to put her on. But then sometimes if she hasn't latched, like if she has refused, I'll try again in an hour or something. Even when she doesn't have those cues, I just sort of, I'm kind of worrying that she's not eating.
You said she's got good output and she's putting on weight well?
Yeah, I haven't weighed her in a couple of weeks just because I haven't gone down to the child health clinic just with the pandemic.
So when she does get on, is she still doing a few good feeds a day, or is she starting to refuse every time?
She's doing a few good feeds. I'd say maybe if she's feeding, 8 to 10 times a day, her night feeds are good. And her sort of before bed, before bath, like 5:30 feed that she always wants, she's feeding well then. So she's having, the night feed, the sort of late arvo, and then through the night feeds are good. But throughout the day, very short, less than 10 minutes. I don't even know if she's getting any hind milk.
That's okay. So breast refusal's tricky, and it is something I've experienced, and it's pretty stressful when it occurs. One thing, it's hard to advise like this without seeing her at the breast,
Sure.
So if it continued and it escalates quickly where she's getting less and less, just get some support and have a face-to-face consult. But certainly trusting, for starters, if she's doing good output and she's putting on weight, trust, and you've had great milk supply, she's clever and she will tell you when she wants it, and she'll come off when she's had enough, and that's okay. Try to let her call the shots and see what happens. Certainly your breasts are going to tell you a story as well. So if she calls the shots and she comes off, and next thing you know it, you're rock hard full, your breasts are telling you she didn't empty that breast. She didn't you're in harmony with each other when you're not adding in expressions and, kind of going off her patterns. So you've got her telling you the story with her increased weight gain and her nappies, and you've got your breast telling you. The only thing I would really practice, if she's feeding well overnight, it could be that she just needs to sort of have a secure, kind of really dialed down feed. So during the day it might be too much going on, potentially it might be too rushed. You might be sort of, I'm not saying you are, but you could be sort of feeding her on the go, or just kind of not taking note of the same positions. So for some babies, it can be a bit stressful feeding if there's a huge amount of milk flow, and we know that we've got more milk supply, a sort of higher volume at the start of the day. So often breast refusals happening in the sort of beginning of the day where they're just like, oh, that's too much milk.
Okay.
So
That makes sense.
Yeah, so something as simple as letting her be more on top and not vulnerable underneath you.
Yeah, because I use the cradle hold mainly. I've tried other things, and that just, like you were saying, it just feels right. But I am trying to sort of experiment a little bit more.
Yeah, so in the mornings, if you're finding it's typically sort of the first half of the day that she's refusing, maybe just give her a couple of sort of really reclined position feeds. She's a bit more on top, so you're letting her have that gravity over the top, so she's more independent and in control of the flow if that's causing her stress. And just focus on the positive experiences at the breast. So she's not having this sort of conditioned experience of going to the breast when she's trying to communicate, I'm done, mum, you know?
Yeah, okay, all right.
A whole consult there, potentially.
Yeah,
so just experiment, but if she's putting on weight and she's draining your breast enough for you to feel comfortable and she's doing wheeze and poos, just see if she's changing her feeding pattern and she's just not feeding as often.
Okay, all right. Because I went to the ABA website and they said generally it sort of clears up within a few days. So fingers crossed. But I'll use those hints and maybe contact you after as well. Yeah.
Positive experiences, and sometimes babies need an agenda-free time with mum. So, and I did it to my daughter. I was like, I have an agenda here. I want to feed you. I've got things to
yeah.
I didn't feed before. I want you. I'm a feeder. I'm Italian. Let's go. And she was like, stop it. Like, you're driving me crazy, woman. So I had to be like, your emotional needs are as important as your nutritional needs. I literally had to calm myself down like that. So just, I don't know, experiment.
Okay, I will. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's okay.
Does anyone else have any questions, or should we wrap it up?
I hope that was helpful.
Yeah,
it was great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. That was very good.
If you guys know anyone who wanted to tune in but couldn't make it, I've been recording, so I'll just pop it up in the Facebook group.
Awesome.
Sorry, Bekki. Surprise.
You got the beginning of me like, I don't know how to screen share.
But yeah, anyway, sitting there if you know anyone else who it could help, and then I'll put Bekki's information there as well, so you guys can contact her. And I know you guys are new breastfeeders, but I just wanted to say there's value in lactation consultants and support for your whole feeding journey. I know for me, I was fortunate enough to have a fairly...
Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
Anyway, can you hear me now? No?
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, when you're returning to work, I found that's when I needed the most support and guidance, just in terms of, you know, how do I do this with childcare? Do I pump? Do I do formula? Like, what do I do? So, you know, support is valuable throughout your whole breastfeeding journey. So don't just think it's just getting things started, you know, type of guidance. You know, it, like she said, breastfeeding is a marathon, and you might find that you have struggles, you know, more towards the finish line than at the start, and that's normal too.
Okay.
Have I stopped sharing, just out of curiosity?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay. I don't know.
All right, I'm going to stop.
Yes, 100%, Caitlin. And look, I think it's extra hard sometimes for people who think they should know what they're doing, like people who have had a baby before, who have breastfed, a midwife or a lactation consultant. You know, like, there's no shoulds. we're all just mums figuring it out when it comes to being a mum, and then we've got our jobs, and it's very different knowing what to do as a mum, or kind of learning what to do, versus objectively being able to support somebody. So yeah, definitely. And trying to fit breastfeeding into work is tricky, hence full circle. So yeah, it is sometimes just completely incompatible with the way we live, and it'll be interesting to see the outcomes of breastfeeding mums during the isolation period, because I think we're going to have some pretty good results with breastfeeding, because there's not so much pressure to get anything else done, which is lovely.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks so much, Bekki. I'm going to stop recording, I think. I